What if I told you that the most important Targaryen in Westeros history isn't Daenerys, isn't Jon Snow, and definitely isn't the Mad King? What if the key to understanding the entire Targaryen legacy lies in a bald baby who gets dragged across the Seven Kingdoms while everyone around him loses their minds? Welcome to Westeros Throne, where we're diving deep into young Aegon's wild ride through a night of the Seven Kingdoms. And trust me, this is not your typical Dragon Prince story. Before we get into this madness, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon because we're bringing you Game of Thrones content hotter than wildfire, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let me set the stage here. We're talking about Aegon V, better known as Aegon the Unlikely, and his childhood is basically a medieval road trip from hell. This kid starts life as so far down the succession line that he's got better odds of becoming a traveling minstrel than sitting the Iron Throne. We're talking fourth son of a fourth son type of situation. The realm literally forgot this kid existed, which, honestly, in a family where everyone's either murdering each other or going insane, might have been the smartest survival strategy ever. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Young Aegon, or Egg as everyone calls him, because apparently Targaryens love their nicknames, ends up squiring for a hedge knight named Duncan the Tall. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like some Disney fairy tale setup, pump the brakes. Duncan is basically a 6-foot-something tower of good intentions and questionable decision-making skills. He's the kind of guy who accidentally starts political incidents before breakfast. And Egg? This kid shaves his head to hide his distinctive Targaryen silver hair and pretends to be a common boy. Imagine a prince playing peasant, except the stakes are his actual life because Westeros doesn't exactly have a great track record with dynamic between these two is pure gold. You've got Dunk, who's trying to be a knight of honor in a world that rewards backstabbing and treachery, paired with a secret prince who's simultaneously the smartest and most reckless kid you'll ever meet. It's like watching a medieval buddy cop movie, except instead of solving crimes, they're stumbling into succession crises and small folk rebellions. Now here's what makes Egg's story absolutely fascinating in the grand scheme of Targaryen history. This kid grows up seeing the realm from the ground level. While his cousins are living in castles and learning how to be entitled nobles, Egg is out there sleeping in ditches, eating stale bread, and watching how the common people actually live under Targaryen rule. And spoiler alert, it's not great. The small folk are getting crushed by taxes, brutalized by corrupt lords, and generally having a terrible time while the nobles play their little games of thrones. But wait, it gets better. Throughout his journey, Egg witnesses firsthand what happens when the nobility forgets that ruling means responsibility, not just privilege. He sees hedge knights getting trampled at tourneys for entertainment. He watches as lords treat their subjects like disposable property. He experiences what it's like when justice is just whatever the guy with the biggest army says it is. This isn't just character development, people. This is a masterclass in how not to run a kingdom, and Egg's taking notes like his life depends on it. Because eventually it will. The genius of Egg's journey is that it's preparing him for something nobody expects, including himself. Remember, this kid has about as much chance of becoming king as you or I do. The succession line is packed tighter than a flea-bottom alehouse. But Westeros has this funny habit of killing off Targaryens faster than you can say fire and blood. And suddenly that impossibly long succession line starts looking pretty short. What really sets Egg apart from basically every other Targaryen we know is his perspective. Think about it. Aerys the Mad King, raised in luxury, went completely bonkers. Viserys, Daenerys' brother, entitled disaster from day one. Even Rhaegar, for all his prophecy obsession, was fundamentally disconnected from reality. But Egg? This kid knows what a loaf of bread costs because he's had to count coppers to buy one. He understands that when lords play their games, it's the small folk who bleed. He's literally living the education that every ruler should have, but almost none do. The adventures Egg and Dunk stumble into aren't just random episodic fun, though they are absolutely entertaining. Each misadventure teaches Egg something crucial about power, justice, and leadership. They're constantly running into situations where the law says one thing, but doing the right thing means something completely different. And Egg's watching Dunk, This simple hedge knight, with more honor in his pinky finger than most lords have in their entire bodies, consistently choose the hard right over the easy wrong. Here's the kicker that makes this whole story even more tragic and beautiful. Aegon eventually becomes one of the best kings Westeros ever sees. Aegon the Unlikely earns that crown through decades of trying to reform the realm, attempting to improve the lives of common people, and fighting against the entrenched nobility who think the small folk exist solely to serve them. Everything he learned on the road with Dunk shapes his reign. The boy who slept in stables becomes the king who remembers that shepherds and stable boys matter just as much as lords and ladies. But the story doesn't have a fairy tale ending because this is Game of Thrones, and we don't do happy endings here. Aegon's reforms face constant resistance. The nobility fights him at every turn, and his obsession with dragons, with trying to bring back the power that made House Targaryen great, eventually leads to the tragedy at Summerhall. The same fire that defined his house consumes him, and the dream of dragon restoration dies with him, at least for a few more generations until a certain silver-haired girl walks into a funeral pyre in Essos. What makes Aegon's journey so compelling for us as viewers and readers is that it represents something rare in the Game of Thrones universe: hope. In a world drowning in cynicism, backstabbing, and moral compromise, here's a story about a good kid trying to stay good in a system designed to corrupt everyone who touches it. It's about maintaining idealism when everything around you screams that idealism is for fools. And it's about how sometimes, just sometimes, the right person can make a difference, even if that difference doesn't last forever. The relationship between Dunk and Aegon also shows us something the main Game of Thrones series often forgets. Genuine friendship across class lines is possible. These two care about each other in a way that transcends their massive social gap. Dunk sees Aegon as a squire and later as his friend, not as a meal ticket or political connection. And Aegon sees Dunk as a moral compass and protector, not as a servant. The lessons from Aegon's adventures with Dunk resonate through generations. They remind us that true leadership isn't about birthright or dragon blood or prophecies written in ancient books. It's about character forged through hardship, wisdom earned through experience, and the willingness to see everyone, from the highest lord to the lowest peasant, as equally human and equally deserving of dignity. Thanks for watching Westeros Throne, and may your own journey be half as interesting as Aegon's. Let's talk about that stare down, though, because the cinematography of that scene is doing a lot of heavy lifting. When Rhaenys looks at Alicent, there's recognition there. Two women who have been used, manipulated, and constrained by the patriarchal power structures of Westeros. Alicent was married off to a man old enough to be her grandfather. Rhaenys was denied her birthright. They are both victims of the same system, even though they are on opposite sides of this conflict. In that moment, Rhaenys sees herself in Alicent, and maybe, just maybe, she is giving her a chance that she wishes someone had given her decades ago. But here's the kicker. Rhaenys' mercy is not actually mercy for Alicent and the Greens. It is a gift they do not deserve and will not appreciate, because the Greens do not stop. They do not take this near-death experience as a sign to negotiate or find peace. They double down. They prepare for war. They hunt down Rhaenyra's allies. So Rhaenys' moment of restraint gets thrown back in her face, and the war